In this lesson, we're going to finish our cleanup work, and we'll also be creating a lens blur for the background. So in our previous lesson, we were able to finish cutting out our items, our skateboarder and his skateboard and his shadow. And now we're going to focus on cleaning up the background. So we already did create a content-aware fill for where our skateboarder was, and I think that turned out pretty well. But now we need to just finish cleaning up a few more things. We're going to get rid of this skateboarder right here. And then we're going to blur our background so that it can cover up some of our flaws that we have back there. That would be really difficult to try and clone some of these areas where, like, perhaps there's a tree or a part of a car that would be hard to just recreate. So let's go ahead and we're going to use our content or our lasso to make a selection of this skateboarder. And we'll just fill him in with content aware. So let's just grab his arm, his body, all this will come down here. And let's go ahead and go to edit, fill, and we'll do a content aware. Let's hit OK. So actually that doesn't look bad at all. We do need to go across right here and extend that shadow all the way. We'll grab our clone stamp tool. I'm actually going to sample way back here. I'm going to sample this shadow edge. I'm going to come right here. Actually, I did not mean to select that one as well. I meant to just grab that edge. I'll come right back over here and just kind of paint that across right about like that. Then I'm going to sample the inside and just kind of push that shadow across. Awesome. So now all we need to do is get rid of his shadow down here. So I'm going to go ahead and pick up where this seam is. I'm going to bring that seam right about here, just to have that kind of stay lined up, because you can see that seam does continue. And then now that I am closer to the pole, I'm going to go ahead and sample the pole. I'm going to come down here, get that lined up. Go ahead and extend that edge over. So it looks like we have a little bit of discrepancy in our width for our pole, because the pole that I sampled from was like just a little bit more wide. Maybe it was the angle or something. So we might need to go ahead and push this up about like that. Okay, I'm happy with that. So now we have our items taken care of that we want to get rid of. And now we're going to create a duplicate of this layer. So even without a selection, if you hit Control J, it will duplicate that layer. And so when you have a selection, then it will make a new layer via that selection. But without a selection, then it'll just duplicate that layer. And we're going to call this our blur. And then we're going to go to Filter. We're going to go to Blur, and we're going to create a lens blur. And so you can see that when we have blurred our background a little bit, that like it kind of took care of any kind of strangeness that was happening. So even though we have two blue trucks over here, like when they're blurred out, you really can't tell what's going on. They could be a fleet of trucks or something like that. And so this window is like way bigger than what you can see. I'm going to go ahead and try and scale that down. So when you do a lens blur, you get this other window that will allow you to take a look at your artwork and make any kind of changes. So right now our settings are faster, and we don't have a source for our lens blur. We do have a hexagon for our shape. Our radius we have set to 15, and I think that looks great. So you can look at my other settings here. Our threshold 255. We don't have any rotation, so I'm just going to hit OK and accept that and back up. But what I'm going to do though is I'm going to create a layer mask. So click this little button right here to add a layer mask. And I'm going to grab a gradient. And so this gradient, you can see we have these presets. I'm just going to use the first one, just a foreground to background. And so that will paint black to white when we drag this gradient. And what I'm wanting to do is create a gradient for that mask. So I'm just going to pull that up. And so what I'm doing, I'm just kind of creating some gradients. I'm holding shift just to get a perfectly straight line. And so what I'm really wanting to do is make the foreground in focus, and then when we get to sort of this background area, that the items are not in focus anymore. So about like that. But what we'll also do is we're going to paint out maybe some of these things that are a little bit more in focus. And so we can make sure that we're on our mask layer, our mask setting. So we have this selected. We'll grab our brush, hit B. I'm just going to click and make sure that we have masked out the things that should be in focus. So I'll increase that brush size. Just click and then hold shift and click up. And so now we're making sure that that rail is in focus. I'm just going to click shift, and it's okay if you don't grab it exactly right, because we're going to come back and fix anything that we have accidentally overpainted. So it looks like we just need to come back and hit X. So we're going to go back and hit shift and paint out some of these areas that should still be out of focus around this rail. So just hitting shift and making sure that those things are staying out of focus. About like that. Awesome. All right, so our rail is still in focus, and you can see that as we start to look back into the background, that those things are out of focus. Very cool. And what we can do though, so we have our mask. I'm just going to add a little bit of a blur just to kind of blur some of these edges that we've painted. So go to Filter, Blur, and we're going to add just a little bit of a Gaussian blur to our edges here. And it looks like you can tell what we have painted. Looks like we need to blur just a little bit on the inside of that rail as well, or fill in. But I'm going to add just a couple of pixels here, just to that edge, and hit OK. I'm going to grab my brush. I need to just click, nope, wrong color, with black, X to change that to black if you have black and white. Hit X and just kind of make sure that I have all this filled in. So now that we have our background is blurred out and we have our foreground in focus, then we are good to stop here, and we can save this out as a Photoshop document. And then in our next lesson, now that we've cleaned all this up, then we'll begin animating our first clip in After Effects.